In a city of gleaming towers and curated perfection, 6-year-old Ethan Harper stood frozen in his polished shoes and whispered 5 words that unraveled everything. "Mama, he's my brother." What began as a quiet walk home from a glittering charity gala turned into a revelation that shook Evelyn Harper's carefully controlled world. A homeless boy on 7th Street, barefoot and hungry, wasn't just another shadow in the crowd. He was Jamal, the forgotten piece of Ethan's past. As memory clashed with denial, Evelyn was forced to confront the truth buried beneath flawless adoption records and agency. Smiles, her son had once belonged to another boy, a protector in a world of blue coats and cold nights. What followed was a mother's reckoning, a journey through guilt, discovery and redemption. From the cold grit of a city sidewalk to the warmth of a reunited embrace, Evelyn fought against a broken system, a paper-thin past, and her own pride to give her son not just a home, but a brother. This is not just a story about adoption. It's about memory, resilience, and the quiet bravery of children who refuse to forget. If stories of hope and humanity move you, don't forget to like, subscribe to my channel, and share this with someone who still believes in the power of love. 6-year-old Ethan Harper stood on the bustling sidewalk, his charcoal suit pristine, but his dark eyes wide with recognition. His small hand gripped his mother's, his polished shoes rooted to the pavement. The city towers soared above, the glass facades catching the amber glow of dusk, reflecting wealth that felt worlds away from the boy he stared at. Evelyn Harper, Ethan's mother, paused mid-step, her ivory blazer catching the breeze. At 38, she was a real estate titan, her name synonymous with the skyline's sleek high-rises. They just left the Grand Meridian, a glittering venue where the city's elite had gathered for a children's literacy fundraiser. The ballroom had shimmered with crystal chandeliers, the air heavy with jasmine perfume and soft jazz. Evelyn had navigated the crowd with practiced ease, exchanging smiles with philanthropists and CEOs, while Ethan stood quietly, his gaze drifting to the towering windows. Guests cooed over him, such a little gentleman. But he'd barely responded, his silence a shield. Now on 7th Street, his words jolted Evelyn. She knelt, her silk scarf brushing the gritty pavement, her pearl earrings glinting. "Ethan, darling, what do you mean?" But Ethan's eyes were locked on a frail figure huddled against a wall, and his trembling voice carried a truth she couldn't dismiss. The city pulsed with life, taxis honked, street vendors' grills sizzled, the air sharp with exhaust and roasted nuts. Evelyn's heels clicked as they rounded 7th Street, where polished storefronts gave way to shadowed alleys strewn with litter. Ethan stopped abruptly, his grip tightening until her fingers ached. "Ethan?" she asked, her voice soft but edged with concern. He didn't answer, his breath shallow, his eyes riveted to a boy slumped beside a rusted dumpster. Barefoot, shirtless save for a tattered vest, the boy was no older than 9. His ribs jutted beneath grimy skin, his cheeks hollow from hunger. A cardboard sign in his hands read, "Hungry." In uneven marker, the letters smudged by rain. Ethan's chest heaved, his suit jacket rumpled. "Mama, he's my brother," he repeated, his voice cracking. Evelyn blinked, her ordered world tilting. "Ethan, you don't have a brother," she said, her tone gentle but firm, a reflex of her life where every detail was scheduled. But Ethan's certainty was unshakable. "That's Jamal," he whispered. "He shared his bread with me. In the place with the blue cots. When I was scared, he held my hand." The words were too vivid, too specific for imagination. Evelyn's stomach twisted as she met the boy's gaze. Dark, steady, not begging, but carrying a weight that stirred something deep within her. Evelyn's mind raced, grappling with Ethan's words. The place with the blue cots. She pictured the adoption papers, pristine and minimal, handed to her and Thomas 5 years ago. Ethan had been a quiet baby, barely a year old, with wide eyes and a habit of clinging to her hand. The agency had said he was abandoned, alone, briefly in foster care. No mention of another child, no mention of Jamal. Yet Ethan's voice held a clarity that unnerved her. She crouched beside him, her knees pressing into the pavement's grit. "Ethan, tell me more," she urged, her voice softer now. He swallowed, his eyes never leaving the boy. It was cold, he said. The room smelled like damp clothes. Jamal gave me his blanket when I shivered. He told me stories about stars so I wouldn't cry. Evelyn's throat tightened. She looked at the boy again. Jamal, Ethan had called him. His face was gaunt, but his eyes held a quiet strength, as if he'd seen too much to hope, but too much to give up. A memory flickered in Evelyn's mind, unbidden. Her own childhood, not in poverty, but in a sterile home where love was rationed like resources. She pushed it away, focusing on Ethan. "We need to go," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. The two boys stared at each other across the street, the city fading into a blur of noise and motion. Ethan's small frame trembled, his suit a stark contrast to the boy's tattered vest. "He's my big brother," Ethan said louder now, his voice breaking. Evelyn's heart pounded. She knelt again, ignoring the stares of passers-by. "Ethan, you've never mentioned this before," she said, searching his face. His eyes brimmed with tears. "I did have a brother," he insisted. "Before you and Papa brought me here. When I didn't have nice clothes. When I was always cold." The words hit like a blow, stirring a guilt Evelyn hadn't known she carried. She looked at Jamal, whose gaze met hers, not pleading, not angry, just watching, as if he'd learned to expect nothing. A flashback gripped her. The adoption agency's sleek office, the agent's smooth assurances, the thin file labeled Ethan. She trusted it, eager to build a family with Thomas, who dreamed of a son. Now doubt crept in. Had she missed something? She tried to guide Ethan away. "Come, darling, let's keep walking." But he yanked back, his cry piercing the air. "No!" He'd do his shared, even when he was hungry too. The crowd thickened, their murmurs a low hum, and Evelyn's cheeks flushed with heat. Evelyn's composure frayed as the crowd grew, their phones snapping photos, their whispers speculative. Her cab driver leaned out his window watching. Ethan's defiance was new. He was her quiet boy, always compliant, his silence a comfort in her structured life. Now his eyes blazed with a purpose she didn't understand. She glanced at Jamal, who sat still, his cardboard sign resting against his knees. His face was unreadable, but his fingers twitched as if ready to flee. Evelyn's mind churned. She thought of Thomas, who was away on business, his absence a quiet ache. He'd been the one to push for adoption, his warmth balancing her pragmatism. What would he say now? She pulled out her phone, snapping a quick photo of the boys, not for evidence but to anchor herself. "Ethan," she said, her voice steadier, "tell me about the blue cots." He swallowed, his voice small. "They were hard and the room was dark. Jamal sang to me when the other kids were mean." The image was vivid, too real for a 6-year-old's invention. Evelyn's heart raced. She needed answers, but first she needed to keep Ethan calm. Ethan broke free, his polished shoes tapping softly on the pavement as he stepped toward. "Jamal!" Evelyn's hand hung in the air, her breath catching. "Jamal!" Ethan whispered, the name a lifeline. The boy looked up, his face still, as if afraid to trust his senses. His jaw trembled and he murmured, "Hey!" Ethan rushed forward, throwing his arms around Jamal's bony neck. Jamal froze, his thin frame rigid, then slowly lifted a hand to Ethan's back, his touch hesitant, as if kindness was a risk. Evelyn stood rooted, her mind reeling. This wasn't a child's fantasy, it was memory, raw and unyielding. 5 years ago, she and Thomas had adopted Ethan, through a private agency from a small country overseas. The process was seamless. The record sparse, an abandoned infant briefly in foster care. No mention of another child, no mention of Jamal. Yet Ethan's certainty was undeniable, and Jamal's quiet recognition mirrored it. Evelyn's throat tightened as she watched them. 2 boys bound by something deeper than she could fathom. She stepped closer, her voice unsteady. You know each other?" Jamal shielded his eyes from the setting sun, his voice soft but clear. "I used to give him my soup when the workers forgot," he said. "Told him stories to make him sleep." Evelyn's heart pounded. "Why are you here?" she asked, her voice barely audible. Jamal looked down, his fingers tracing the cardboard sign. "They didn't take me. Said my lungs were bad. Said no one would want me." He spoke without bitterness, only a weary acceptance that cut deeper than tears. Ethan clung to him, his small hands gripping Jamal's shoulders. "I remember you," Ethan said, his voice trembling. "You told me about stars." Jamal's eyes softened, a crack in his guarded facade. "You were so little," he murmured. "Always scared at night." The crowd's murmurs grew, but Evelyn barely noticed. She saw only her son, his face alight with a joy she'd never seen, and the boy who'd once been his world. She realized Ethan hadn't found a stranger. He'd found someone he loved, someone who'd held his hand when the world offered nothing. Evelyn's mind flashed to the orphanage, a place she'd never seen but now imagined vividly, peeling walls, the stench of mildew, the cries of children in dim halls. Ethan, barely a toddler, curled in a cot, his small body shivering. Jamal, older by 2 years, sneaking him bits of bread, whispering tales of distant lands to quiet his fears. The day they were separated was a blur in Ethan's memory, but Jamal's face told the story, reaching for his brother. As men in suits took Ethan away, his small voice crying, Don't go!" Evelyn's chest ached with guilt. She'd built a life of precision, of control, but she'd missed this. She knelt beside the boys, her voice soft. "Ethan will figure this out," she promised. He looked up, his eyes pleading. "We can't leave him." She nodded, her throat tight. "We won't." She took another photo, capturing the boy's embrace, Jamal's guarded eyes, Ethan's desperate grip. That night, in the Harper mansion, Evelyn sat at her walnut desk, the city skyline glittering through the windows. Ethan slept fitfully, whispering Jamal in his dreams. Evelyn, a woman of logic and control, felt her composure unravel. She dialed Marcus Reed, her private investigator, at midnight. "I need everything," she said, her voice low. "Adoption records, orphanage files, medical reports, anything about Ethan's early years. If there's a boy named Jamal, I want to know why they were separated." Marcus promised results by morning. Evelyn didn't sleep, her mind replaying the adoption process, Thomas's excitement, her own relief, the agency's smooth assurances. The file had been thin, the details vague. Now doubt gnawed at her, and she failed to ask the right questions. She stared at the photo on her phone, Ethan clinging to Jamal, who sat quietly, as if he didn't believe he deserved to be seen. Marcus arrived at dawn, his face grim, a thin folder in hand. "It's messy," he said, spreading documents across the desk. Ethan and Jamal had been admitted to the same orphanage within days. Both infants, both frail. They'd shared a room for nearly a year, their cribs side by side. One record listed Jamal's name next to Ethan's, but a red line crossed it out, marked unfit for adoption, respiratory issues not recommended. No further details. Evelyn's hands trembled as she read the words. "They never told us," she whispered. Marcus nodded. The agency cut corners. Jamal was older, sicker. They erased him to streamline Ethan's adoption. Evelyn's stomach churned. She thought of Ethan's stories, the blue cots, the shared bread, the hand in the dark. She imagined Jamal, barely 4, watching his brother taken away. "Find out more," she told Marcus. "I want to know everything." She returned to 7th Street with Ethan the next morning, praying Jamal was still there. He was, sitting beside the dumpster, a half-eaten apple untouched beside him. His eyes lit up when he saw Ethan, who ran across the pavement and hugged him fiercely. Evelyn knelt, her voice soft. "Jamal, come home with us. Just until we sort this out." Jamal blinked, wary. "Why?" "Because my son never forgot you," she said. "And I should have asked about you years ago." Over the next week, Evelyn leveraged every connection. Emergency foster placement, legal consultations, a DNA test to confirm their shared history. She met with Thomas, who'd returned from his trip, his initial skepticism giving way to shock as Marcus uncovered more records. The boys had been inseparable, the bond noted by overworked staff who'd failed to report it. Evelyn visited the adoption agency, confronting a nervous director who stammered excuses about clerical oversights. She felt a fire ignite within her, a resolve to right this wrong. Meanwhile, Jamal stayed in the Harper guest room, his eyes wide at the soft bed and warm meals. He flinched at sudden noises, his distrust a reflex of years on the street. Ethan stayed close, showing him picture books, his pride in his big brother unwavering. Evelyn watched them, her guilt deepening. She'd given Ethan everything, except the one person he'd never stopped needing. On the sixth day, the DNA test confirmed no blood relation, but a shared history. Same foster home, same intake file, same care ID, two boys torn apart by a callous pen stroke. Evelyn stood before a press conference, Ethan and Jamal at her side. "We thought we were giving Ethan a new beginning," she said, her voice raw. "But he had a brother we never knew about. That omission stole 5 years from them." She placed a hand on Jamal's shoulder. "This is Jamal. He's not broken. He's brave. And he's home." The crowd rose, some in tears, and Jamal, for the first time in years, smiled. Months later, Jamal started school, his first real classroom. He struggled with reading, his fingers tracing letters with painful slowness, but excelled in math, his quick mind surprising his teachers. Ethan held his hand each morning, proudly calling him my big brother to his friends. Some peers whispered about Jamal's worn shoes, but Ethan's fierce loyalty silenced them. Evelyn enrolled Jamal in therapy, where he spoke haltingly of the streets, hiding from rain, scavenging food, dodging cruel strangers. She arranged art classes where he drew stark cityscapes and nutrition plans to rebuild his strength. At home, she gave him a bed, a nameplate, and a place on the family photo wall. On his 9th birthday, she handed him a laminated copy of his cardboard sign, inscribed in silver ink, "You asked for food, you gave love, and now you both have everything." Some families are made by chance, others by children who refuse to forget. Ethan hadn't just found a lost boy, he'd found his missing piece, a brother forever. Over the next week, Evelyn leveraged every connection: emergency foster placement, legal consultations, a DNA test to confirm their shared history. She met with Thomas, who'd returned from his trip, his initial skepticism giving way to shock as Marcus uncovered more records. The boys had been inseparable, the bond noted by overworked staff who'd failed to report it. Evelyn visited the adoption agency, confronting a nervous director who stammered excuses about clerical oversights. She felt a fire ignite within her, a resolve to right this wrong. Meanwhile, Jamal stayed in the Harper guest room, his eyes wide at the soft bed and warm meals. He flinched at sudden noises, his distrust a reflex of years on the street. Ethan stayed close, showing him picture books, his pride in his big brother unwavering. Evelyn watched them, her guilt deepening. She'd given Ethan everything, except the one person he'd never stopped needing. On the 6th day, the DNA test confirmed no blood relation, but a shared history. Same foster home, same intake file, same care ID, two boys torn apart by a callous pen stroke. Evelyn stood before a press conference, Ethan and Jamal at her side. "We thought we were giving Ethan a new beginning," she said, her voice raw. "But he had a brother we never knew about. That omission stole 5 years from them." She placed a hand on Jamal's shoulder. "This is Jamal. He's not broken. He's brave. And he's home." The crowd rose, some in tears, and Jamal, for the first time in years, smiled. Months later, Jamal started school, his first real classroom. He struggled with reading, his fingers tracing letters with painful slowness, but excelled in math, his quick mind surprising his teachers. Ethan held his hand each morning, "Besidendios dose todos estelen," proudly calling him my big brother to his friends. Some peers whispered about Jamal's worn shoes, but Ethan's fierce loyalty silenced them. Evelyn enrolled Jamal in therapy, where he spoke haltingly of the streets, hiding from rain, scavenging food, dodging cruel strangers. She arranged art classes, where he drew stark cityscapes, and nutrition plans to rebuild his strength. At home, she gave him a bed, a nameplate, and a place on the family photo wall. On his 9th birthday, she handed him a laminated copy of his cardboard sign, inscribed in silver ink, "You asked for food, you gave love, and now you both have everything." Some families are made by chance, others by children who refuse to forget. Ethan hadn't just found a lost boy, he'd found his missing piece, a brother forever. Evelyn's journey didn't end with the press conference. She met with adoption reform advocates, her voice shaking as she recounted the boy's story. She funded investigations into the agency, uncovering a pattern of erased records and neglected children. Thomas, once skeptical, became her ally, his warmth guiding her through moments of doubt. The media hailed her as a hero, but she rejected the label, haunted by her own ignorance. At home, Jamal's laughter grew louder, his drawings brighter. Ethan's quiet nature bloomed into confidence, his brother's presence a steady anchor. The city, once a backdrop of contrasts, became a place of hope, where two boys had rewritten their story. If you loved this story, give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more heartfelt tales. Let us know in the comments, where are you watching from? Stay kind, stay curious, and keep watching.